Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Tuned into another episode of the business side of music. We literally, folks, if you could see us, we have a full house today, and that's fine with me because it's less talking for me to do and more talking for these gentlemen to do. So I'm gonna make it around the table here. First of all, met this gentleman last week at another podcast show that I was actually a guest on, and that's Nick Allegro, who told me about this entity, this company called mastering.com. And I said, well, okay, that's it. Real simple. Have to have you on the show. So, Nick, glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate you having us. This is wonderful. You know, anytime we get a chance to talk about what we do and get it out there so more people can benefit from what we do, we take advantage of that anytime we can. So thank you again for allowing this.
And of course, talking about taking advantage of things, we have Michael Gilbride, who is here, who I understand is the general manager of mastering.com. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Along with Mad Records, which is a recently up and coming independent record label.
Yep. Education funded record label. So
nice.
Get into that.
Like to hear that. And then on my other side, now, this gentleman does not have a Southern accent, so don't get bewildered by it. But he is also joining us, and his name is Chris Giorgio, who is a mentor for mastering.com with a focus on production. So welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Before you turn the podcast off because of my British accent, just keep going. It's going to be a great podcast.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, an English accent just classes up the joint, yeah. So we're in good shape. Nick, I'm going to start with you since that's how the conversation began in the beginning. I remember you telling me, or maybe I should say this, you told me that you actually got involved with mastering.com as a student.
Yeah, actually, that's how I got involved with them. That's how I got started. And the benefit to that for me, the way I looked at it, is I saw it from a student's perspective. I saw what they were doing from a student's perspective and really jumped in full board, realizing how it can help people. And so when I became a student and I was going through the process, I helped out any way I could to help the mentors, to help the organization however it could, because I knew that would be something good for other people. And so I wanted to make sure that I could pass that on. And that's how I ended up becoming involved more with mastering.com, was by starting as a student and going through the actual process.
So I'm going to back up a couple steps, and I'm going to let whoever decides, just a show of hands, exactly what is mastering.com? Who wants to take the lead on that one?
I probably have the best.
We should probably let the general manager handle that one.
There's punchiest way of saying this, but mastering.com is an online education company, online music school that teaches mastering, mixing, and creative production in that order. That's our unique twist on it, is we start with mastering, and then we teach mixing, and then we teach creative production.
So you're almost literally going backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we start with a 2-track on mastering, right? And we teach the fundamentals. So the way that we like to break it down is we say, start with the objective side of music production and then move towards the subjective. So to make an analogy, which I'm a very big analogy guy, if you're learning how to paint, you don't grab a canvas and start painting your masterpiece, right? You learn how to hold the brush, and you learn how to shadow, and you learn how to, do the basics before you ever learn how to go out and do the creative side of painting. And for some reason, when it comes to music, everybody buys a DAW, and then they jump in and they start trying to make a song, right? Because that's what you want to do. You're a musician. So what we do is we say, okay, cool. If you've reached that plateau in your music where it's not quite getting where you want it to get, it's maybe time to step and start with the objective side of music production and learn in reverse. And that's why our core program is called the Reverse Engineer, because it starts with mastering, then mixing, and then creative production.
This is a learning process, though, and that, I think that's, Chris, where you fall into part of that is that whole mentoring aspect, and your focus is on production. So how does that work?
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning as well that I, like Nick, came in as a student.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I came into what I believe was the first iteration of the reverse engineer a few years ago. And the universe and whatever you want to believe kind of put things into motion, and I ended up getting hired by mastering.com in the early stages of me going through the program. So I was in the mixing portion, so section 2 of the program, and I already kind of had a career in production up to that point, and joined TRE to really start to refine my engineering skills. But for a lot of people, they're so stuck in the subjective side of everything. They don't have any foundational understanding of the building blocks that make up the kind of foundation of creating. So they can get stuck not even knowing how to navigate their DAW, not understanding what a stereo out is, not knowing what compression, EQ, any of the tools that once mastered allow them total creative freedom. They don't have any of that. And where I kind of sit in is the guiding hand of a little bit of subjectivity as people are going through the process, and also reinforcing, go back to the mastering section, go back to the mixing section. You need to really understand these tools, because all of that is going to inform how strong your production skills are, because you start to internalize what a quote unquote kind of industry standard sound is. And then in your production process, you're already making decisions that align with that and makes your job easier when you move into mixing and mastering. So I'm kind of the more sound selection, structure, arrangement, all of that stuff is kind of my wheelhouse. But going through the program, I'm kind of aligning everything back to mastering and mixing, which I think is what makes us so powerful and different in terms of how people are actually learning this.
Nick, I want to jump to you. When it comes to someone who wants to enroll in mastering.com, how much book knowledge and how much practical experience, hands-on, do they need to have, or can they be still wet behind the ears and just have a passion for it?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that kind of teed that one up great. Because like Chris, I came through as a student and became a mentor, and the program that I'm mentoring right now is for beginner students. It's for people that don't have an idea how to use a DAW, don't have ideas how to hook up their equipment, have never done anything like that before. They want to jump into the reverse engineer program, but they don't feel that they have enough knowledge to do that. They feel that they're so far behind that they don't feel that I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready. So mastering.com, one thing that all of the people in mastering.com do is they're always looking for ways to help the students. And what they realized going through the fix the mixes and finding people that are interested in it, they found there was a gap there. There was a gap where there was people that wanted to do it but didn't feel they'd had enough background. They didn't have enough knowledge. And so what they said is, let's design a beginning course. Let's design a 6-week course that's based on the same process as the reverse engineer, but just kind of a Reader's Digest version of it, a smaller version of it to help people get prepared, and then they can make that jump to reverse engineer when they feel that they're ready. And we've had great success. We've had 3 cohorts of it so far, and we've had a great success with a lot of the students going through the MP 101, jumping to the reverse engineer after they were done with that because they felt more confident. And watching these students that have been through that and where they're at in the reverse engineer program is it's phenomenal, because you see the aha moments go off in their head. We're like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about that, 6 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever. And then they get into something in the reverse engineer and go, that's what they were talking about. And now it made sense. So we give them that beginning background before they get into the reverse engineer through the MP 101 program. So they're always looking for ways to improve.
Going to jump a little bit all over the place here, and whoever wants to jump in can. There are so many DAW programs out there these days. I started out on Pro Tools 9, and I thought I was hot stuff. And I don't know what iteration it is at this point.
It's 24.63, I think, right now. I'm a Pro Tools guy, too. I started out in Pro Tools 5.
Right.
So, and these guys are always getting on my case about that because they're Logic guys. They use Logic a lot. And one of the things that we tell people in mastering.com is we're DAW agnostic. It doesn't matter what DAW you use, because mastering.com, and that's the reason it's in reverse. It's all about the reason why behind the moves that you make. Anything that you do with the DAW, with a plugin, with anything like that is all about the reason why you're doing that. Not just that this knob does that, but why does it do that? Why, if I turn this attack or if I turn this release, it does that? It's because if you understand the why behind all of that, what happens is it doesn't matter what DAW you're using. It doesn't matter what plugin you're using. You could figure out a way to make it work. And so that's why they teach the way that they do, and that's why we teach the way we do, is it doesn't matter. If you're using Reaper, if you're using Cubase, if you're using Logic, if you're using Pro Tools, if you're using, and we've even started doing DAW sessions, student-run DAW sessions, where people could get on a Zoom call and bring problems or questions about their specific DAW, and it's run by people in the class that know their DAW, so they can help answer those questions. So.
I want to ask you, Michael, because when I started in the world of engineering and mixing and doing a little bit of producing, compression was always it's such an overused term. And of course, we've now taken music, we've almost taken that natural feel away from it.
Yeah.
I'm an old vinyl guy.
Yeah.
I say this so many times on the show, the listeners have to be tired of it, but I'll continue to say it. I'm an analog guy in a digital world. And, vinyl to me is still king. When you get into the program as a student and someone brings in something, they bring something to the table that's just enough to make them dangerous, do you pretty much have to just wipe them clean, like almost erase them and start over from scratch to once again, hey, if I put enough compression on it, it'll sound great type mindset?
Yeah. So when we bring students into the program, we typically say that, I think there's a misconception that if you're 90% of the way there, or if you're 80% of the way there, most people think it's like one 20% chunk that they're missing, or maybe like two 10% chunks, or 4 or 5% chunks, whatever. And in reality, it's a million little slivers that have been missing throughout the entire process. And the only way to truly get that last 20% out of your music is to kind of take some cement and fill in all those cracks throughout the entire process. And so when people come to us, and they'll come to us from all different skill levels, some are 80% of the way there, some are 20% of the way, some are beginners like Nick said, but everybody goes through the same process, because regardless of how far along you are, it's those little cracks, and it's learning how to use the attack on a compressor, or any of these small little things that maybe you got the wrong direction 10 years ago and never bothered to re-examine again. And it's unearthing all those bad habits throughout this process that kind of gets you that last 20%. So that's kind of the cool thing about the program, is that regardless of where you come in, holistically, the entire thing is valuable, because it's all of these little golden nuggets that you pick up along the way that actually fill in those cracks.
And the other thing to go along with that, just because coming from a student perspective, in the mentor calls that we do, probably the thing that you'll hear the mentors say the most is, where are you in the program? And then they'll tell you where they are in the program, and the mentor will go, you're going to get to that. Yeah. Just trust the process, go through, and the whole reverse engineer program was written in the way it was, in the direction it was, in the order that it was, because everything builds on the previous thing. And if these students get in there and they skip things because I want to learn about this, or I want to learn about that, then they're constantly asking questions that would have been answered had they just trust the process. And so that's one of the main things that we're always telling students: just trust the process, go through the course in the order that's there.
Totally.
So that brings me to you, Chris. When you're focused on production, is you get that eager beaver that, once again, they know enough just to be dangerous. And is maybe I should put it this way: is everybody teachable, or is there just a select?
That's a tough question.
Nick says that's
How
a tough
this
question.
Podcast?
Yeah, 4 or 5 days.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, is almost anybody? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this so it makes the most sense in the least amount of time. Are most people teachable, even if they have no experience in this world?
That's a really great question.
Well, I don't ask bad questions. At least I try not to.
So yeah, I think everyone is teachable. I think that the hardest part of the process of actually getting people to really refine their craft and step towards mastery is the mindset piece. And that's something that is so vital to what we teach at mastering.com and in TRE and all of the electives and 101 programs that we have. We've got these 3 kind of pillars that we kind of live by in TRE, and it's transform your mindset, train your ears, and work on your craft every day. And it's focusing on those 3 things every day as much as you can, and not getting distracted by squirrels.
Yeah,
is the main thing
like my
here.
shirt that I had on the other day.
Yeah, welcome to my world. Yeah.
And I think some people get the mindset part very quickly, and everything else kind of falls into place. There are other students that come in that have a different kind of mindset, or have been kind of molded by the world we live in, where it's instant gratification and tips and tricks, and this is the only way to use a compressor on a vocal every single time, and you're going to get pro sound. And what we teach is, forget all of that stuff. If you understand the core concepts and you come to a mentor call and go, so I'm working on this, what do I do? It depends. That's the thing, right? It depends. Are you working on a rock track? What does the artist want? Are you working on a pop track, on an EDM track, on a country pop track, on a, blues track? It's going to be very different depending on the source material you're working with, but the foundational concepts and the why behind everything is going to inform the moves that you make. And if you've trained your ears, you can hear what it needs and do just what it needs. And that's kind of the biggest kind of transformation I see, is when someone goes, oh, I get it. I shouldn't be focusing on the tips and techniques. I just need to focus on, why am I doing it and how does it work? How do I use this tool, and when would I want to use it and why? So that's kind of my long-winded way of do I think anyone's teachable? Yes. I think it's tougher to drill in the mindset part. I think that's the hardest part to change.
I heard a long time ago the saying is, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. And so many times the students come in and they're not ready mindset-wise. They're ready to take on the program and everything. They may have a background or whatever, but it might take them 3 months, 6 months before they have that aha moment that he said, that they go, ah. And two of the words we teach in the course that come up often is never use never or always. There, as far as techniques, anything that you do, there's the words never and always, eliminate them from your vocabulary because they just don't have a place in audio and in music.
There's one thing I'll add to that. Is just from the business perspective, it presents a kind of a unique challenge too for us, because what's best for the student is to get the mindset right, because like Chris said, everything flows from that. If the mindset's not right, then the rest does not work, right? But like you said, there's eager beavers that want to jump in and go right into, it's like the guitarists who playing Smoke on the Water. You want to play something cool right from the jump and just jump right into it. And the hard part is they've paid us for a program, and we need to slow them down before they get to the part that they want to get to. And it's been a really interesting challenge for us to try and navigate, which is, how do we get you to trust us enough to know to go through the process the way that it's laid out? And that's what's been really nice about sort of the last couple years now, is that we have enough students like Nick, like Chris, that have gone through the program, that come out and say, hey, trust the process. Like, trust me, just go with it. And that's starting to now catch up to the point where people are coming in with the mindset maybe a little bit more ready to go and open-minded to the process. So that's been interesting.
It almost sounds like a Star Wars moment of Yoda teaching Luke Skywalker.
Yes,
that's really what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for a couple of our sponsors to help pay the bills here. And when we come back, we've actually been joined by producer extraordinaire Steve Creech has wandered into the studio, and we're going to get a few words of wisdom out of him. But Nick Allegro, Chris Giorgio, and Michael Gilbride are in the studio here on the business side of music.
Are you a fan of 80s and 90s country? Then check out Throwback Country Music, the weekly nationwide show hosted by me, Britt Jones. I have exclusive interviews with legends and icons that include Grammy Award winners and Grand Ole Opry stars. You can listen to the show wherever you get your podcast, or watch it on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. For more info and access to these options, visit our website at throwbackcountrymusic.com. That's throwbackcountrymusic.com.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names: marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof, building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
You're tuned in to the business side of music. Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee. I love it when we get a large volume of people in the room. It just kind of makes it feel all homey. Nick Allegro, Chris Giorgio, and Michael Gilbride are sitting at the table. Steve Creech is holding court over all of us. Steve, we'll give a big shout out to you.
Hey, pod people. You're in the right place.
We're going to talk about really kind of you mentioned painting and having the canvas and learning how to hold the brush. Let's take that brush for a minute. Let's do a broad brush stroke of what mastering.com is, the format, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, well, one thing for mastering.com is that we're very mission, vision, values driven. So for us, anytime we're making a decision strategically, business wise, we always kind of put it through the lens of like what our mission, vision, values is. And for us, that was always to re-engineer higher education for musicians. So one thing that we saw as a glaring problem in the music industry was that you had all of these amazingly talented musicians, creatives, producers that were going off and taking, $100,000 worth of debt to go to these, schools and get their degree and all of this. And then we'd find them working at Guitar Center a couple months later and the degree's on the wall and the $100,000 of debt is there, right? And we saw that and we said, okay, well, there's an opportunity here to help musicians and to give them something that's comparable in terms of quality of education, if not better, at a fraction of the price of these traditional schools. And the only difference, of course, being that schools give out degrees and we don't. And our counterpoint to that was always, it's music. If it sounds good, it is good, right? You don't need a piece of paper on your wall to let you know if the music sounds good.
Because the music really is the end result.
Right.
And that, for a lack of better terms, that's your diploma you're hanging on the wall, is that music.
Exactly. And I think that's the unique part about music education is that if we were talking about an online law school, it's different, right? The degree means something, or a medical program, then the degree means something. But music, the ends kind of justify the means. If the song's good, the song's good, and no one's going to ask you where you got your degree from. And so in the early days of the business, that was more of a concern. People were coming in and saying, well, what about a great degree? What about the certification? And over time now, as we've been pumping out results and students that have been having success, people are going, forget the degree. I want to do what they're doing. I want to get that job. I want to do what they're doing. So for us, it's always been to create an alternative for musicians so that they can chase their passions without just completely indenture servitude for the rest of their life with debt to these massive schools. And the other benefit of that too is that we update the curriculum every single day. The nice thing about not being an accredited university is we can change the curriculum whatever we want. And so if Dolby Atmos is making big strides or something like that, we can add those types of curriculums and features to the school every single day. And so it's this adaptability and affordability that has kind of allowed us to position ourselves against the traditional schools, and it's worked out pretty well.
Chris, this is where I'm going to get real dangerous. Okay, I know just enough to be dangerous that I've already said. Michael brought up Dolby Atmos, which seems to be the hot dish in the restaurant, so to speak, right now. That, I would think, is not a good place to start, though. You still want to get down to that 2-channel mastering before you do anything. Can all of that lead up to something like Dolby Atmos? And let me preface that by saying Dolby Atmos is not the end-all. That's going to be replaced by something else down the road eventually. But can this course curriculum, can that translate into being able to work in that field at some point?
Absolutely. The reason I say that is because everything that we teach is transferable in terms of the foundation. So it's volume, frequency, space, right? So we teach mixing and production as well in terms of kind of a 3D cube. So we're thinking about height, about front to back, depth, about placement within the stereo field, and all of that is totally transferable to Dolby Atmos. If you look at, mixing Dolby Atmos in Logic Pro, for example, you get a head and you get a cube. And then you can kind of place everything in a 3D space. So while we haven't intentionally thought about the cube in the sense of Dolby Atmos, everything that we're teaching in terms of where you're placing things, how you create an immersive environment, even just in stereo, is totally transferable. It's just a few little adjustments you have to make in terms of the tool itself. And that's it.
The interesting thing too about starting with the objective side is if you go frequency, space, and volume, then no matter what changes happen, it's not like music can be anything but those things. Right? And so no matter the way you package them, organize them, the technology that comes out, it's all going to boil down to some combination of those three things. And so if the students get a really strong core understanding of that, they can adapt as the changes come out. It's like the difference between memorizing a formula and understanding how the formula works. If the variables change and you understand the formula, you can update everything with it. If you're just memorizing it, then when the formula changes, you can't do anything about it, right? But if they understand the actual underlying concepts, then they can change with it.
We talked about this before the show about the music industry as a whole is the one thing that is constant is change. And what was good 5 or 10 years ago is now antiquated today. But mastering has not really changed over the years, at least the basic principle of it, right?
The basic principle of mastering is basically correct any imperfections with a broad brushstroke, find any problems, fix those if you can. If not, you push back onto the mix. Again, that's why the reverse engineer is so important. But basically, it's fixing any imperfections, enhancing, and bringing up the level. No matter what tools you do, no matter what you use to do it, those three things are what you do. Fix problems, enhance it, and bring it up to level. So everything else just kind of falls beyond that somewhere.
Well, the thing that has changed about mastering is that 10 years ago, it was only for a certain group of people. It was only for the kind of this shadowy kind of mastering was this like secret and dark magic kind of behind closed doors. A couple people knew how to do it. No one really knew it. Yeah, exactly. No one knew exactly quite what it was or what was happening. And the thing that's changed is not how mastering is done necessarily, but transparency and accessibility to understand that process. And that was kind of a big mission of ours, was to kind of take it out of these shadowy rooms and bring it out to the people so they can understand it, because it does impact everything else they're doing. If it's accessible now to mix and to produce, well, why isn't it accessible to master and understand how that pushes back on the other parts of the process?
So you're really pushing mastering into the spotlight.
Yeah.
And giving it equal footing, equal ground?
Yeah, mastering.com, the domain name tends to do that for us.
Yeah,
it's the throughput between all of these things, and it's just sort of a stand-in for kind of saying objectivity, bringing objectivity to the subjective process.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would be mastering and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And that just wouldn't flow real
No
well.
one liked MikeGilbride.com. No one wanted to do that one for some reason.
Well, I think Mike did.
Yeah, I was a big fan of it.
Michael was a big fan of that one.
Chris, do you see this program? And first of all, let me ask you this. How long is this curriculum? How long does it typically take?
It varies for each student, so it depends on where people are at in terms of their life situation. So some people, might get through it within 3 months. Some might get through it in a year. So it kind of depends on where they're at and how much time up front they're able to actually put in on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. And it's not easy. I mean, the first part of mastering, you have to master over 100 tracks. It's not, it's not just, here's a video on how to compress and how to train your ears and EQ a stereo track. This is like, okay, here are the tools, and now go and master. And then go and master again and again and again and again and again until you internalize all of this stuff. And it's very intentional in terms of the tracks as well. There are some intentional build-up and mistakes to really start to really test people's chops as well. So, yeah, it varies. How long do we generally kind of offer the whole program with mentorship for?
Typically 1 year.
Yeah.
You'll get mentorship for. We have a couple different options though. It depends, because each person's kind of life situation is different. Some people are more casual learners. Some people want to kind of bang it out all at once. But the mentorship's an important part of it, because when you're going through those 100, you're going to start to get disoriented, right? And bringing it to someone like Chris, who can give you, again, or Nick, someone who can give you that kind of objective guardrails and say, okay, here's what you're missing and whatnot, and then go back and return and keep practicing. So it's a combination between the curriculum, we always say curriculum, courses, and community, our curriculum, mentorship, and community. It's the combination of all three of those that really kind of ingrains it.
But at the same time, making mistakes is part of the learning process.
Exactly.
And it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh, we tell them all the time. If you want to learn how to use a compressor, push it. Go beyond where you're gonna use it. Take the attack and go all the way down with it. Go all the way up with it. Take the release. Go all the way down. Go all the way up. Take the threshold. Crank it all the way one way. Crank it. Listen to what it's doing. Again, it comes back to the reason why, not just understanding that knob, but why are you using that? And so by pushing that to the limit, sometimes that helps you. You make those mistakes, and it helps you to understand what that tool is going to do. So we encourage people to do that. We encourage them to take that and push it to its limit and beyond, and then bring it back. So all of that is part of the process. All of that is part of understanding that process. And again, it's a step, but it's that repetition over and over and over again where they get better and better and better. One of the things is, you were talking about the ear training. Ear training is vitally important so that people understand what they're hearing. So we go through a very in-depth room analysis for people and help them get their room set up so it's accurate. If they can't get their room set up that's accurate, then we have them using headphones with a sound ID correction, so that now they're listening in a correct environment. Because if you go into an environment that's not acoustically correct, it's not acoustically true, and you mix, then you come out of there, it could sound way low-endy. It could sound, you can hear high end that's harsh, and because you're not really mixing, you're not mastering it to a level that's acoustically true. And so that's part of the curriculum. That's the first thing we put them through is, look, start your ear training, let's get your room or let's get your headphones so that now when you're listening accurately.
To your point, the making mistakes is the one thing that everyone needs, and also the one thing that everyone avoids the most. And that's why the mindset component is so key. And that's kind of the nice thing about the community that we have, is that everybody knows you're going to come in and make mistakes. That's often hard to do in music because it's such a personal thing, right? It's such a personal expression. And so if you make a mistake, it almost feels like your soul has been exposed in a way, right? And I think that's why it's hard to learn. And so you need a community around you that understands, okay, if you make a mistake, that's not just, it didn't just happen, it's actually a good thing, right? Because now you can learn from it. And again, that all goes back to the mindset. If you don't have that mindset, it won't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But each set of ears, and the God gives us two, a left and a right, each set of ears are different though. Is that something that you leave well enough alone in the learning process, or do you teach them various ways to listen to music? Is there a better understanding in this course curriculum than what we're used to just by as a consumer listening to music through headphones or a nice stereo system?
Reference tracks.
Yeah. So totally.
And metering.
Yeah. So there's a few things that we kind of encourage students to do. First of all, there's various tools. There's sites like Sound Gym. There's a couple of other free alternatives as well that we also use just to dial in people's understanding and internalizing of dynamics and frequencies, as well as space, being able to determine if something's distorted or how long a reverb or delay time is and how that sounds, which is kind of more important. And we kind of meet people where they're at. If there are people that have, significant difficulties in terms of their hearing range, we try to kind of meet them and get on calls with them and figure out alternatives as well. We've got such a range of people that are in our community, and we've even had one of our mentors teach someone who's deaf.
Really?
Yeah, multiple times, quite a few students, and really leaned into the metering
Yeah,
and
this is the
internalizing
mindset,
that.
right? This is
Totally.
the mindset. Is like you can conquer these things. It's just there's variables that you need to control for. And I think to your point is like we have an incredible. I was talking with the guy Jim Cook who did our acoustic treatment program, and good Lord, is he one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life?
I know.
He created
like
our
B.F. Skinner.
he created our acoustic treatment section of the program, and it's so comprehensive, and that controls your external environment, right, and gets the studio acoustically treated, and then our mentors and coaches and curriculum work on getting the internal kind of understanding, the ear training done, and then between those two, you can usually get most people to a pretty good spot.
And then the thing that I brought up is once you get that, now you use reference tracks and you use metering. So if you've got hearing issues, say in the high end, we teach them how to use metering so to make up for that difference. So you could look at this reference track and you can see how that is metered out as far as the frequencies go. And then when you look at yours and you realize, oh, this is really peaking up over here, but you don't hear it, you realize it's there. I just don't hear it. So we teach them to depend on references and meters as well as their hearing and as well as their room. And that that compensates for that. So everybody's hearing is different, but you pull up all of these songs that are out there that are great songs that are mixed well and they're mastered well, and the meters pretty much look the same. You know, we pull up on a PAS analyzer from Waves, and you can see the curve of it. They're almost all the same, because if you have a balance of the EQ and you have a balance of the compression, you have balance of everything else, that meter's going to look pretty much the same, because that's what reacts to the ears properly. That's what acoustic truth is, and so that becomes vitally important. Then comparing it to that reference track, so you can go back and forth, and you can say, okay, this is the reference track that has the drums in it that I like. Now you can listen to the two and you can compare them and see if you're making sure that it's in line with that. And so there's a lot of different tools to utilize to make up for that.
Again, it's cementing in those cracks, you know.
Totally.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for a couple more of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have a little change in the conversation here. We're going to talk about another venture, especially that Michael is involved in, and that's Mad Records.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter, or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
As a musician, you have a dream. That vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is a part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about independence coupled with committed benevolent interest, which means that they can represent your client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products. It's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact John Adams at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309 for more information.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting around the podcast table is Nick Allegro, Chris Giorgio, and Michael Gilbride, along with, sitting in the peanut section, producer Steve Creech is here. Michael, let's change tracks here a little bit, both literally and figuratively, and let's talk about Mad Records. You yes. folks had a pretty big weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, so this has been a crazy couple months trying to get this off the ground. So we had an idea about a year ago. It was a bunch of us hanging out at my house in Nashville, a bunch of the management team from mastering.com, and like any group of music fans, the idea got floated where we're like, we should start a record label, because it's just the holy grail, I feel like, of anything in music is like, we should start a record label. And when it comes to mastering.com, same as we have with our reverse philosophy with the teaching program, we said, okay, well, if we're going to do it, we need a hook. We need something interesting. We need to do it in a way that's going to be different. And so I kind of went away and sat with that idea for a while, which was, okay, well, if we're going to make a record label, then what can we do to make it new and fresh and different? And that's where we came up with the idea of using our education programs to fund the record deals. And by doing that, it means that we don't have to take ownership of the artist's music that we sign. So we don't take any income or revenue from the artists that we sign. They own 100% of their music. They keep 100% of their merch sales. They keep 100% of their ticket sales, their public appearances. And instead, what we do is when we have the meetings with those artists and we discuss how we're investing the funds and how we're promoting them and how we're developing them, we allow our students to sit in on those meetings. And they get to see us develop and coach and invest the money in real time. And the students who purchase those education programs, then that funds the record deal, and that allows us to do it for taking 0% of the artist's music. So it's brand new, completely new. We had our launch party on Friday. It was packed house. And as I was saying to you before the podcast, I think the most interesting thing was the people coming up to me and the team after and shaking our hands and looking us in the eye and being like, we really like what you're doing and we believe in this. Because if you look at any other record label, for the most part, they're moving in the opposite direction. They're taking a bigger share of the music, a bigger share of the ticket sales, 360 deals, taking public appearance fees, all of that. And I said, if we can find a way to position ourselves in the complete opposite side, we've got an opportunity to really shake it up. And so Friday was kind of the kickoff to all that, and it was pretty surreal, but it's been a big success so far, and the support has been really cool.
When we talk about traditional record labels, this is anything but.
Yeah.
And is that formula working?
Yeah, well, it's copy and paste from what we did with mastering.com, which was traditional education, the $100,000 music degree, and coming up with an alternative for that. So when we came into the record label space, we said, okay, traditional record labels, how can we disrupt in that space as well? Because in my opinion, and I could go off on this for a while if you want, but I'll try and keep it pretty. This is where I start to get.
Here's the good news: we have plenty of tape.
Beautiful.
So.
Okay. Well, here's the thing: is that somewhere around the time of streaming, it became very difficult to monetize music. Right? Everybody started to panic a little bit. How are we going to actually continue to make money from music? In my opinion, instead of pivoting and figuring out a new way to monetize music, such as through education programs or anything, the traditional labels just started taking more of what was already happening, right? And they started taking a piece of things that they weren't really even involved in, like merchandise and ticket sales and all of that. And that's where you've seen that now it's kind of these 360 deals where they take everything. And so the refusal or unwillingness or complacency that led to kind of just not pivoting at that point has left a pretty gaping hole in the industry. For someone to step in and actually help these artists and find a way to fund and support the artists that doesn't exploit them. And it took a while for us to kind of get the details of the model down, but once we had it, we said, this works. So first time we signed our first artist and sold more education programs than we paid out to the artists, and that was our proof of concept. And we said, okay, there's something here, we can do this. And now we've been rolling with that, and she's been our first artist, Emmy Grace. She's fantastic if you haven't heard her, but she's been getting support from us, strategy, promotion. We signed her to a $20,000 record deal, and the beauty of that is it's not in advance. She doesn't have to pay it back to us, right? Unlike traditional record labels as well. So it works. The hardest part is getting people to know about it, is getting awareness out there. If they know about it, they love it, because it's something that's good for artists, and that's rare nowadays.
I'm going to jump in. In fact, when you talk about a $20,000 record deal, back in my label days, a $20,000 deal translated into a $100,000 recoupable that the artist had to pay back to the label. Maybe not necessarily in a monetary sense, but in what they owned or what they didn't own.
Well, this is the trick that I think gets played, and you'll probably hear it when I say $20,000. You go, oh, it'll be a big deal. You know, what's $20,000 going to do? But this is kind of the sleight of hand that I feel like happens in the label industry, is they'll sign you to $1 million deal for your next 5 albums. Okay, it takes you now 1 year to get each one of those albums out, so it's really $200,000 a year. Then you got taxes, and then also it's an advance that you've got to pay back.
It's a loan,
right? It's a loan. It's just a loan. And then let's say you're 6 months into that process, you're not getting traction. Well, all of a sudden your music gets shelved, and you're done, right? So $20,000, we're allowed to invest that, promote them. Since we don't need to get ROI off the artists themselves, the beauty of that is we could start taking some risks again. We could start signing artists that maybe don't have mass appeal but are really good. Or maybe we can sign an artist that's really good live but doesn't have a social media presence because they're good at live. I've had this hypothesis for a long time that the best artists are probably unsigned right now because all the ones getting signed are really good content creators. And that's cool, that's great, but I want to sign the best musicians possible and the best acts out there. And most of them don't give a crap about Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. And they're just floating around there waiting to get support. And because the labels need to sign people and get a return immediately, they never get the help. So I said, cool, we'll take them.
How can people find out about mastering.com and Mad Records? Where do they go?
Yeah, well, mastering.com, go to mastering.com.
Simple enough.
Nice and easy call to action there. And then Mad Records is at Mad Records label on Instagram. We do most of our kind of public facing, talking about the label through that Instagram. We have a couple other marketing channels and other content that we do as well, but Mad Records label on Instagram is the place to go.
But if someone wants to get involved, become a student with mastering.com, you just go to the website. All the questions should be answered there?
Yep, exactly. Most of the time it'll direct you to speak with someone to the team, and then the team does a good job kind of getting a feel for where you're at and kind of playing point guard on which part of the ecosystem to get redirected
And there's
to.
also free content up there for them to get an idea of what we actually do.
Oh.
There's plenty of free content. I mean, there's a ton of free content that we give away.
Go to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, we've got 20-hour courses on DAW stuff, EQ, compression, vocal production, mixing, mastering. You know,
our free courses are
these
better
are all
than
free.
most.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Here's a shout out to our loyal listeners. Without all of you, we wouldn't be one of the most listened to music industry interview podcasts, including achieving #1 status in many countries around the world, according to podcasts. In fact, we just found out this week that Portugal and Mozambique were #1. So thank you to our listeners there. If you enjoy our show, please check out our Facebook page at Business Side of Music Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on the Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. We are looking for 100,000 subscribers, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're holding us back, so please make it happen. You can check out our video webcast there and get to see me along with our guests such as Nick, Mike, Chris, and of course Steve sitting in the peanut gallery here in the studio. And sometimes Buddy the Music Dog occasionally makes his entrance and exit. So guys, thank you so much for being on the show. This was great.
Thank you very much for having us.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Traci Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.